Inside this captured American engine, German engineers didn't find a secret weapon. They found the mathematical proof that their empire was already a ghost. By December 1944, the air inside a dimly lit hangar on the outskirts of Rechlin smelled of cold oil, oxidized metal, and the unmistakable scent of defeat. Germany was still fighting, but every technician in that room could sense the walls closing in. Under the harsh glare of a single floodlight stood a massive engine crate, its wood scarred and marked with fading stencils that read Pratt and Whitney Aircraft R-2800. This particular beast had been salvaged from the twisted, burned wreckage of an American P-47 Thunderbolt shot down over northern France. While the fuselage had been shredded by fire, this enormous 18-cylinder heart had somehow survived the impact intact. Technicians from the Luftwaffe's experimental division gathered around it like priests about to open a forbidden relic. They whispered among themselves, mocking the machine they called the flying milk bottle. To the Germans, the American P-47 was a brute, a heavy, clumsy machine that seemed to defy every principle of elegant, streamlined engineering. They did not understand how it could climb so high, take such incredible punishment, and still limp back to base. Berlin wanted answers, and the order was absolute: disassemble the engine, analyze every bolt, and find the secret. As the crate was pried open with crowbars, the mechanics stepped back to let the light hit the metal. It was 1,200 pounds of alloy and raw power. The double row of cylinders formed a perfect circle, gleaming even under a layer of battle grime. A junior engineer named Otto Henschel ran his hand across the casing, tracing the embossed words, Double Wasp. Henschel had spent years repairing hundreds of BMW 801s, the engines that powered Germany's formidable FW-190s. But this American machine looked alien to him. The cooling fins were thicker, the bolts were oddly oversized, and the exhaust manifold was arranged in a pattern none of them recognized. Someone in the group dismissed it as overbuilt, claiming the Americans simply lacked the finesse to build something light. But Henschel stayed silent. He knew that in the brutal mathematics of war, overbuilt often meant built to last. Outside, the snow drifted across the airfield, muffling the distant thud of artillery from the Western Front, while inside, the Germans began the slow, methodical ritual of dismantling a masterpiece they did not yet comprehend. When the cowling finally came claiming off, the Americans a sweet metallic scent filled to the room. build something light. The first cylinder head Henschel revealed a level of machining precision that made even the senior engineers pause. That in the brutal the threads math were cut so finely they mathematics seemed of to war, be polished by overbuilt light often itself. meant built there to were last. No tool marks, no chatter, and no imperfections. These were not parts crafted by a master artisan. They were the products of an industrial civilization operating at a scale Germany could no longer even imagine. In that moment, the atmosphere in the hangar shifted. The mocking jokes faded and the laughter stopped. Henschel realized he wasn't just looking at a piece of machinery. He was looking at the physical embodiment of America's industrial soul. Mathematics of war. Every surface told a story of mass production perfected in factories across the air ran day and night without the fear of falling bombs. Thud of artillery by supply lines that stretched at a scale Germany from the Western Front. He understood then that every Double Wasp rolling off a line in Connecticut came from a nation that could afford to build 1,000 more for every one that was shot down. Faded. The team eventually rotated the engine to expose the rear section, and a murmur rippled through the group. A massive turbine housing sat behind the crankcase, larger than any supercharger they had ever encountered. At a scale, Henschel leaned closer, tracing the maze of stainless steel ducts that fed into the intake manifold. He whispered to the chief engineer that it wasn't a simple mechanical supercharger, but a turbocharger driven by exhaust gas. The chief engineer frowned, calling it impossible. In Germany, turbocharging required heat-resistant alloys that the Reich simply did not possess. Nickel, chromium, and cobalt were rationed and scarce, yet here those precious metals were, humming silently in captured glory. The older men exchanged uneasy glances. They had spent years tuning the BMW 801 and Daimler-Benz 605 for peak efficiency, but this American engine was different. It wasn't about cleverness or elegance. It was about brute strength forged through abundance. It was unstoppable. The hangar By the winter of 1944, the Luftwaffe's technical bureau was drowning in bad news. Mocking jokes. Squadrons once led by veterans were now filled with boys barely old enough to shave, and fuel stocks were so low that training flights were limited to minutes a week. Meanwhile, the Thunderbolt kept appearing over Berlin, bigger, louder, and tougher than anything they had ever seen. Reports from German pilots sounded like fever dreams. They claimed to hit the Thunderbolt dozens of times, only for it to keep flying. Others described the P-47 diving through formations of FW-190s like an anvil falling from the sky. At first, the high command dismissed these stories as excuses for failure. No airplane that size should be able to fight like that. Drowning in bad news. But as the wreckage arrived, squadrons once led by veterans were now filled with boys barely old enough to shave. Engines were fuel stocks were so low that training flights were limited to minutes a week. A machine gun burst that would tear a Messerschmitt in half, over Berlin left a scratch on the louder and tougher than anything they had ever seen. For German engineers from German pilots sounded like fever dreams, but its operational altitude Thunderbolt on the eastern times the Luftwaffe had dominated flying with low to medium altitude P-47 diving through formations of FW-190s like an anvil falling from 30,000 feet, well above the ceiling of most German interceptors. The secret was the Pratt and Whitney R-2800. At altitudes where the air was thin enough to choke a standard engine, and the temperatures could freeze metal solid, alarm the German Wasp reports from German pilots sounded like fever dreams. They claimed to hit the Thunderbolt dozens of times above 25,000 feet. Flying. The others described the P-47 diving through formation to find a secret they could copy like an anvil falling from skies beyond, but the industrial reality was well above the ceiling of most German interceptors. The secret was the Pratt and Whitney R-28. Even if they discovered the secret, the materials to replicate it were gone.
To understand why the Americans were different, one had to look at the philosophy of the machine. To a German engineer,
enough to choke
an engine was a handcrafted masterpiece to be tuned by a craftsman. Each component was hand-fitted, and each bearing was inspected metal solid.
True alarm
it was a
for
system
German
built for
reports from German,
but not for total war.
The German
America, the R-2800 was designed for the assembly line,
gasped for dozens of times, only for it to keep flying
so that thousands of factories
others described the P-47 diving formal investigation.
Microns. Where Germany built art,
America
beyond
built
30,000, and in the harsh reality of
ball bearing factories and aluminum plants
had become a
even if they discovered the secret, the material.
German pilots were fighting with engines that required hours of maintenance after every mission, while American engines could fly dozens of sorties with minimal servicing. A single factory in Connecticut was producing more R-2800s in a month than Germany could build high-performance engines in an entire season. It was a system built on in the hangar.
Reports from
Henschel's hands were black with grease, but his mind was racing. He removed the cylinder head and stared at the valve assembly.
Dozens of times,
the machining
only
was
for it to
immaculate,
keep flying
with a uniformity that suggested every single
others described the P-47 diving
this
formal
was the
investigation.
First great revelation. The American engine was a product of machine perfection, not human adjustment. Then came the second revelation as they dismantled the rear housing. They found the gas-driven turbine, and the metallurgists quickly realized the alloy wasn't steel. It was Inconel, a nickel-chromium alloy that could survive temperatures above 700 degrees Celsius without deforming. Germany had tried to experiment with such metals, but they lacked the nickel to do it on this scale. And Germany could build high-performance engines in the high altitudes wasn't magic. As the night wore on in the hangar, Henschel's hands were black with entire engines, but his mind was racing. The Reich could remove the cylinder head and stared at the R-2800 cooling system. The machining was immaculate, with a uniformity that simple airflow. Every single part was interchangeable. Baffles and intercoolers was to distribute great revelation. The American engine was a product of machine perfection, while the German BMW 801 required constant monitoring as they dismantled the rear housing. They found the gas-driven turbine and the metallurgist. This engine wasn't designed for
that could
aces
survive
or
without
one-off
deforming.
prototypes.
It was
built
producing
for a
more
war
art
where
to do it on
machines had to
this scale.
survive mud,
The reason
salt,
the Thunderbolt
and
could own
inexperienced
the high
pilots.
altitudes
When
wasn't
they
magic.
opened the
It
magneto
was
housing,
superior
they found
metallurgy.
double redundancy.
The Americans had
two
built
spark
entire
plugs per
engines
cylinder
out of
and
materials
two
the Reich could
ignition
only
systems.
dream of.
In the Luftwaffe,
The R-2800 unnecessary
was
weight.
equally
To
impressive.
the Americans,
Instead
it
of
was the
simple
margin of
airflow,
survival.
it used a
At 2
labyrinth
in the
of
morning,
baffles
the
and
chief
intercoolers
engineer
to
calculated
distribute
the
heat
rotational
evenly.
speed of the
It
turbine
looked crude,
at over
but it was
20,000 revolutions
While the
per
German
minute.
BMW
He stopped
801
halfway down the
required
page,
constant
noting
monitoring
that
to
at these
avoid
stresses,
catastrophic
the metal should
overheating.
explode.
The Double Wasp
Henschel
could run at
replied that
full
it
power
would,
for unless the makers knew exactly how far they could push
wasn't
the metal.
designed for 8.
By dawn, the R-2800 lay in pieces across 4 workbenches, its guts exposed. The Germans stood
where
in
machines
silence.
had to
For
survive
years,
mud,
they had believed
salt,
in their own
and
superiority.
Thunderbolt could
Better
own
pilots,
the high altitudes
better tactics,
wasn't magic.
better technology.
It was superior.
But the pieces on the table
Double
told a different
redundancy.
truth.
2
The
spark
Americans
plugs per
had
cylinder
mastered
and
scale.
2 complete materials
Behind
the
every
Reich
Thunderbolt
ignition
stood an
systems.
army of machines and workers in an industrial ecosystem that could outlast any enemy. Henschel picked up a piston, feeling its weight and seeing its flawless, glass-like surface. He thought of the young American pilots who took to the air knowing that if they lost their plane, 1,000 more were waiting back home. That was a luxury no German pilot would ever know. He remarked that while they could copy the shape of the engine, they could never copy its soul. The report eventually reached the Air Ministry in Berlin, where bureaucrats summarized the R-2800 as unnecessarily heavy and wasteful. They used this to justify their focus on lighter, more efficient engines, completely failing to realize this very wastefulness was the secret to survival. Meanwhile, Henschel kept his own private notes. He wrote that every component was built for forgiveness. The Americans expected things to fail, so they made sure the machine could survive the failure. Germany designed to avoid failure, but America designed to endure it. By autumn, Allied bombers were striking German refineries daily. Without high-octane fuel, the German piston engines lost their edge. Meanwhile, the R-2800 roared over Europe on a steady diet of 100-octane gasoline refined in Texas. Logistics, not just genius, were winning the war. When the war finally ended, Rechlin became a graveyard of aviation dreams. Henschel stayed behind long after others had fled, walking the empty hangars. In 1945, American officers arrived looking for the men who understood the machines. Under Operation Paperclip, Henschel was invited to work in the United States. He arrived in Connecticut in 1947, near the very Pratt & Whitney plant that had haunted his dreams. When he first walked through the factory, the sheer noise and scale astonished him. He saw women in overalls and men in aprons producing engines with the precision of surgeons. He realized the chaos on the factory floor was actually power made visible. When asked what he thought, he said it was like watching mathematics being born. The American engineer just laughed and said it was just another Tuesday. Henschel spent his remaining years working on jet projects alongside men he had once tried to defeat. The lessons of the R-2800, redundancy, durability, and cooling margins became the doctrine of the jet age. In 1954, he watched a restored P-47 take flight at an air show. As the radial engine roared with that deep, confident growl, he felt a strange sense of gratitude. The sound was no longer the sound of an enemy. It was the echo of an age where strength meant survival. He wrote in his final letter to a colleague that perfection dies young, but the machines that last are the ones built to forgive human mistakes. The R-2800 had taught him that power wasn't about making a single perfect machine, but about the ability to reproduce excellence endlessly. Before he died in 1971, Henschel donated his papers to a university. Among them was a photograph from Rechlin in 1944, showing young mechanics gathered around that first captured Double Wasp. On the back he had written, "The day we understood." He knew that history rarely remembers the men who turned the wrenches, focusing instead on the generals and the pilots. But he also knew that the future was forged in those dim workshops. Machines do not care about flags. They only reveal the truth of those who build them. The Americans had built for endurance, and they endured. The Germans had built for glory, and that glory had burned out in the cold skies of 1944. The echo of that steel still speaks today through every jet that takes flight, reminding us that progress comes not just from brilliance, but from the ability to endure.